Weil.
Raymond Weil. So he came here in 1913 and excavated here. Okay, and he was sponsored by Rothschild, so he had money. Well, the dig had money, and he wanted to look for the tombs of the house of David. And he was a good biblical archaeologist, which meant just like you have a treasure map that shows you where you're supposed to dig for the treasure, that's what the Bible does, and that's what it did for Raymond Weil. Okay, so he came in and he used his Bible. 1 Kings 2:10 says this. You see it down in the end of the second paragraph. Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. So we know from that verse alone, the city of David is 11 acres. We know from that verse alone, David is buried somewhere inside the city of David. Today, and we're going to go to this place for another reason, but today everybody goes to the tomb of David up on the western hill. Could that possibly be the tomb of David?
No.
No. How do we know? Because the Bible tells us that he's buried in the city of David.
Right.
Okay? Now, the Bible gets more specific than that. And so, Raymond Weil used Nehemiah 3:15 through 16. It's that quote that's indented there on page 66. It says, Shallun repaired the wall of the pool of Siloam. So we were just down at the pool of Siloam. By the king's garden. This makes sense to have the king's garden down by the pool of Siloam, right, doesn't it? As far as the steps going down from the city of David. So they're rebuilding. Nehemiah is having different families rebuild different sections of walls. We know we're on the southern side of the city of David because it's at the pool of Siloam. And we know if you continue and follow the sections that are being built, you end up on the the east side of the Temple Mount. Okay, so we know that he's talking about the sections of wall from the south heading north on this east side of the Temple Mount, or on this east side of the city of David. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so he goes up to these steps that are coming down from the city of David. We don't know where those steps are. Beyond him, Nehemiah, son of Azbuk, made repairs up to a point opposite the tombs of David, as far as the artificial pool. So we got a pool, and then it's talking about the wall line, and these tombs are opposite the wall line, 2 sections of building in Nehemiah's day up from the pool of Siloam. One family builds from the pool of Siloam up to somewhere where the steps come down. Then the next family from where the steps come down up to on the wall. They're building the wall opposite the tombs of the house of David. Okay, now go back to page 62, this one. And here, this was a very scary thing to do, but we put our big giant drone this big up in the sky over there and got some pictures. And
whoa, that's a nice shot.
Okay, so look at that shot. Now I want you to look right here where my finger is. That's the steps we were just sitting on the pool of Siloam. You see why I'm saying I don't understand why it took into the 2000s to figure out where David's palace would be. It'd be at the top. Is he? How soon can he get it here? Okay, so that's the far side, the northern side of the pool of Siloam. It would have come all the way up to these roads. See how big it would be in there?
Yeah.
It would have been all this area here.
That's huge.
Okay, now we're talking the time of Nehemiah, so it wouldn't be the Roman pool. It would be a smaller pool, but it still would have been right there. Usually you have pools, and then in later periods they expand them. Because why start all over again?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see where the pool of Siloam is. Now you see where one section would go up.
Minimum like half an hour, 40 minutes.
Tell them don't worry about it. We'll use these.
To wherever the steps were here.
Okay, so wherever the steps were, and then up here. Now do you see all this bedrock up here? See all the bedrock? That's where Raymond Weil cleared all the way down to bedrock. Now, you see how big the area cleared to bedrock is? That's nothing in this picture. It's a much bigger area than that. See all those houses in this street and all these houses over here? He cleared all the way back into this huge area. He used over 100 donkeys. He used the local people, and he just cleared this whole area out, knowing that he was digging too big of an area, and that according to this description, the tombs of the house of David had to be in that area. Either he's going to find them, or Nehemiah is going to be mistaken somehow. Right?
That's not going to happen.
He comes down, he finds 9 tombs. 9 tombs. Now here's the problem. We've been talking about one city on top of another, and if you look over there at the bedrock that he cleared, do you see how it's a quarry where they've been quarrying blocks of stone? That happened at the time of Hadrian. Now, it's probably not a coincidence, being that Hadrian is trying to supplant the belief systems before him with Roman paganism, that he would quarry purposely in an area that would destroy something sacred. He's trying to eradicate Judaism, which is why the Jews rebel against him, and this is the whole Bar Kokhba revolt, it's called. Okay, and so it's, by the way, do you know what Bar Kokhba means in Aramaic? Bar,
Son of.
Kokhba, star, son of the star.
Whoa, geez.
Why? Because they're waiting for the son of the star. What does that mean? Son of God. That means Messiah, the deliverer. Remember how everybody wanted Jesus to deliver from the Roman oppression? That's what this false Messiah was trying to do, and that's why people were following him. Okay, how did I get there? Okay, it's because they're quarrying this area. So the tombs that he found were greatly damaged from that quarrying, and we're going to go up and look at them, and especially one of them. But the ones that are the 2 best preserved, you can see them in your picture, and you can see them in real life right there. And we're going to go look at them in a moment. Okay.
We're gonna climb up into it.
Okay, so listen. So see this entrance? Okay, now you gotta take the face of this up quite a distance, as you'll see when you get in there, and then put a roof on it. So it wouldn't have been round or anything, it would have been, see how high it's sticking up there. It would have been big and monumental with an entrance going in. Does that look like the entrance of a tomb? Okay, so we're gonna go in there into the inside of it. Don't even feed Michelle.
So you're saying that's not the entrance to anything down here? There was an entrance up here.
No, that is the entrance to the tomb.
Oh.
Yeah.
Step on here, I guess, and then put your foot on there and go up.
Yes.
If you try it, oh, okay, you're telling.
Yeah, and
I would go up this first.
Oh,
and then
this
step
thing's
up.
gonna break right off.
just volunteered. You're next. So that we get 2 guys up there, it'd be good to.
I'll stick here.
Now,
Break.
obviously, this is not for everyone. So,
Yes, please.
What's up there?
Please.
so look in your book, and I'll go through what's up there.
Take
Page 16.
care, Lord.
Gee,
I'm gonna hold the bottom.
Yeah. We need guys on the side, but first let's talk about it. Let's talk about it first with our books. Okay. Now that we got Tim trapped up there in that.
I can hear.
Okay.
Bye, Tim.
So on page 68. Now again, look at where you are. Look at where the entrance is. You got to cover this whole thing up. Do you see how this has been quarried and damaged? So it's a whole section that is in here. You can see these grooves along here. maybe there was a wood floor in there, and so we're talking something monumental here. Okay, and so let's read 68. This is Raymond Weil from his excavation report. He says, "We discovered and have completely cleared what remains of a group of large tombs cut in horizontal galleries. Do you see how it's horizontal? The location of the group in the old city and adjoining the enclosure wall that we just saw out there, corresponds perfectly to the few particulars that we have mainly from Nehemiah about the situation of the Davidic necropolis. These funeral deposits are certainly from the Judean royal period." Okay, now why does he say that? Because he excavated this and took the materials, like the pottery and everything, that date to the time of the Judean period, or the Israelite period. Okay, now he calls T1, Tomb 1 is the one that we're standing in. Okay, so the next quote down says, "Just at the end of T1, the high tunnel of the first stage retains its sarcophagus." Now look over to the right there in that picture. There's some that don't have a book. Maybe you can let them look on. It retains its sarcophagus. Okay, so do you see it? It's hollowed out in the form of a trough. And that's what is up there that anyone who wants to go up can see.
This
And
here?
Yeah, right here, the trough.
Okay.
Now, when you see that trough, understand that this isn't the skeleton that was found in this trough, but this is a typical skeleton. When they buried in this time period, they didn't bury people like this. They buried them crouched, like you see this person buried. And so this, what he's talking about with the sarcophagus, we have exact parallels in tombs that were found in Silwan when they were excavated that still had their burials in them. Okay, so it matches what a burial sarcophagus from this time period looks like. The reason that the critics say that this isn't the tomb of David is because they say that, well, there's just one of them and it doesn't make any sense. But that, again, those are family tombs. This is for a single individual, which makes it make perfect sense. Okay? And one should see it as a resting place of the owner of the tomb. Perhaps David was laid to rest in the excavated sarcophagus of the old upper tunnel of the T1 tomb. Okay, so let me just summarize that as this. This is the most monumental of the tombs, the most likely place that once held the bones of David, King David, is in that sarcophagus trough that Tim is looking at right there. Now, like that sign said down there, this was the absolute majority view for years and years and years until the early 1960s. Kathleen Kenyon, who we're going to be talking about a lot, who is a well-known archaeologist. She dug in Jericho, and we're going to go see Jericho. And then she came up here and dug in the city of David in the early 1960s. In the early 1960s, you're standing in Jordan. Whereas in 1913, when Raymond Weil was digging here, you're in the Ottoman period. And the Ottomans needed some money at that point, and so that's why they allowed that dig. Okay? So it was the majority view until Kathleen Kenyon came along here. She's in Jordan, and we're going to see down in Jericho, it's the whole thing. Her job is to take all these biblical connections and overturn them. We're talking major politics here. Now listen to what she says. The quote is down at the bottom of the first column of page 70. This is from Digging Up Jerusalem. Okay, so this is what she says. The controversial point is the cuttings that Weil identified as the royal tombs of the house of David. The biblical evidence that David and his heirs were buried in Jerusalem has stimulated many searches and fanciful identifications, including that of the so-called tomb of David, shown to tourists today. Think about this. This is where the tourists used to come. This is where they used to come and learn about David and the tombs of the house of David. From the time Weil discovered these and to the time, up to the time when Kenyon was saying this new interpretation. It's not based on fanciful anything. It's based on where the Bible says that the tombs of the house of David are located. And then that's how, from these 11 acres, that's how Raymond Weil knew where to go digging to look for these tombs. It's not fanciful. It's logical. It's reasonable. Okay, now she's got to give her own interpretation to overturn this. Here's what she says. The particular cuttings revealed by Weil were certainly unusual, consisting of two rock-cut tunnels side by side. They are not like any observable cisterns, though the plaster that covers the rock shows that they were at some stage used as cisterns. Okay? Now I want you to take the time to turn around and look at the hole that you came through. Look at where James is. I've never seen any kind of plaster on the walls. You can see the chisel marks right here on the walls. No plaster. Is there any possible way that this would be used as a cistern to hold water?
No way. No way.
But the result is this. Nobody comes here anymore. They all go up on the western hill to the tomb of David on the western hill, which was established up there for two reasons. For the Jews, because one of their rabbis had a mystical vision that the tomb of David and Solomon were up there on the western hill. And for the Christians, because that's where Pentecost happened, and Peter was preaching and talking about the tomb of David, and so they assumed it was right there where he was preaching. I mean, yeah, it is kind of nice to have it to ourselves, but we're talking about the tomb of David. Now, let's read this Psalm 16 under the interpretation. Psalm 16 on page 71. Therefore my heart is glad, and don't forget also that the promise that we just read up in the palace, 2 Samuel 7. And it says this, it starts out this way, remember? When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors. I'm giving you a promise, David. You're not going to live forever. You're going to die and decay in the grave. You're going to be gathered to your ancestors. But I'm going to give you a promise that's going to last forever. Then Psalm 16, 9 through 11. This is a Psalm of David, page 71. Therefore my heart is glad, and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. You make known to me the path of life. Could David have been speaking this psalm about himself? No way could he have been speaking this psalm about himself. He knew this was his destiny. Now, what Peter is doing, and will be there, is Peter is contrasting this tomb with another tomb in Jerusalem that we will be visiting later, and that's the tomb of Jesus. This tomb, he says, has the bones of David. But the tomb that he's talking about with Jesus, the Messiah, is an empty tomb. And this is what the people are listening to, the Jews that are listening to when their hearts are pierced and they realize, oh my gosh, we crucified the Messiah. And they weren't banned from the church because of that. They were brought into the church and the birth of the church because of that. I'm going to shut my thing off. Save batteries.
Thanks, guys.
Again, try to get
Yeah,
on
I'll try to
these.
hit that.